Hey guys, thanks for listening to The Watch. Today's episode features me and Andy talking about Thor Ragnarok. We also break down the last 3 episodes of Stranger Things Season 2, so that's episodes 7, 8, and 9. And we wrap up that, and we talk about the future of that show. We also talk about all the shows that are coming in the next few weeks and the ones that we're going to be talking about. A lot of really cool guests coming up. On last Thursday's show, we talked a lot about the Neptunes and the return of NERD. If you want to check it out, we will be tweeting out our Neptunes playlist on Spotify, so definitely look for that. So today, Thor, Stranger Things, and in the future, a bunch of good stuff coming. So thanks for listening, Baranskis. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Mack Weldon. With a smart design, premium fabrics, and a simple shopping experience, Mack Weldon underwear is definitely better than whatever you're currently wearing. In addition to looking and feeling great, all Mack Weldon products are crafted with natural fibers that have built-in performance capabilities, so they work hard too. They even have a line of silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, which means they eliminate odor. All that, and they are shipped right to your door. And if you don't like the first pair, go ahead and keep it. They will still refund you, no questions asked. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first purchase using the promo code WATCH. Today's episode of The Watch is also brought to you by Stitcher. Game of Thrones fans, check out Stitcher Premium for over 30 hours of exclusive Game of Thrones content, including hardcore Game of Thrones, an addictive series that is 1 part mockumentary and 1 part satire. Listen along as comedian Alex Berg dives deep into the complicated history of Westeros. The Daily Dot called it an absolute must-listen for fans. Start listening now with a 1-month free trial to Stitcher Premium. Go to Stitcher.com/premium and use promo code WATCH at checkout to get your free month. That's Stitcher.com/premium.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he just bought lakeside property in Asgard. It's Andy Greenwald!
Boy, a show of extremes today, Chris. A show of extremes.
For you, for your takes.
Yeah.
Extreme take makeover.
Yeah.
Extreme takeover. Andy, it's Monday. Happy November.
Yeah.
This has been November for a minute. The final days of my 30s.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that today? How are you doing?
Not yet. But it just really, I wanted to just mention up front, we're going to talk today about Thor Ragnarok. And we're going to talk about the last 3 episodes of Stranger Things. Before we got into Thor, I wasn't necessarily in like a sensitive place when I saw this movie, but I think you could say...
Thor?
No, when I saw this movie I'm going to tell you about.
Oh, you were using... I see. You're setting it up.
This weekend, I went and saw Lady Bird.
Oh, great.
And we're not going to talk about it today because I really want you to see it.
I can't wait.
I need to just like make a plea, which is like to anybody listening to the sound of my voice, go see this movie. It is far and away my favorite movie of the year.
Wow. It
is such a like incredible accomplishment by Greta Gerwig, who wrote and directed it, and Saoirse Ronan is amazing in it. Like Laurie Metcalf is incredible in it. And just if you don't know, it's set in 2002 in Sacramento, and it's about a Catholic schoolgirl who calls herself Lady Bird, who wants to get the hell out of Northern California and go to the East Coast to go to a liberal arts college, and it's her senior year of high school, and it kind of follows her through the academic year from 2002 to 2003, and it is like very, very funny and incredibly touching. And I was trying this take out on a couple of people, and when we get to it, I really want to talk about it. But if I could compare it to any movie, in both in terms of how it made me felt at the end, but also it's very kind of got a lot of similarities, is 25th Hour.
Wow.
Yes. In terms of, I mean, 25th Hour is a lot more like kind of like a crime movie that at the end turns into like a full-blown family drama. This is a little bit more like a really lovely like Baumbach comedy, early Baumbach comedy that then gets very just really resonant at the end, but they have some similar themes about regret and wishing you could communicate with your parents better, and it's just, I cannot recommend it more highly.
I am so excited to see this film. I have to ask you one question that I don't believe is a spoiler. How much of the sensations of regret and loss and change have to do with the white chocolate Chris Webber era Kings? Because when you say Sacramento 03...
There's a lot of Peja in this movie.
Right. I am right there. I'm wearing purple. I'm wearing the purple and white.
That's
and
right.
I'm just getting the game stolen from me by the Lakers.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know whether it's... everybody who I know who has seen it has walked away feeling pretty similar.
This is exciting.
Yeah. So it's the real deal, man.
There are few things... as good and exciting as a good and exciting movie, which is a good segue
to Thor Ragnarok. It's been a kind of a quiet time at the box office, kind of a quiet time at the movie multiplex, and then Thor comes through, and everything about it is perfect, is like kind of exactly what people want right now from a superhero movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It has some great action set pieces. It is full to the brim with humor, and it features some of the biggest and brightest Hollywood stars that we've got out there.
Which side of the ball are you on?
Well,
like, listen, kids.
So
Get them big stars in the picture.
I want you to go first because you just walked out of the movie theater.
Nothing glitters like Jeff Goldblum in blue lipstick. That moves the needle at the box office. Guys, I adored this movie. I just walked out of it because you guys know Monday mornings at the ArcLight, that's my bag. This movie was pure pleasure for me. I think it is exactly what a comic book movie should be. I think that not just because, and we can talk about the hows and whys of this, but not just because it breaks from the tradition of either the overly important or the overly destructive or violent or dark trend that has dominated a lot of the movies over the last decade. But what it has is that very, very specific mix of, yes, humor, but also righteous teenage wonder that is what attracts people to stories like Thor, to the art of Jack Kirby or Walt Simonson, all these other people who worked on Thor and made Thor cool, even though, one of the arguments I'm hearing from a lot of people, including our friend and colleague Sean Fennessy, who has an absolutely terrific podcast interview with Thor's director,
on The Big Picture,
Taika Waititi. They both copped to this, thinking we never liked Thor at all, even though maybe we liked comic books.
Sure.
It works when you steer the absurdity meter up to 200 and it becomes something glorious. As soon as those first notes of Immigrant Song start playing, as soon as you see Tessa Thompson on a winged Pegasus about to hurl a sword at Cate Blanchett,
right?
Let's go. Yes, it is both ridiculous and glorious, and it has absolutely no shame in straddling that divide. And in fact, not just straddling the divide, if I may, building a rainbow bridge between them.
The Bifrost Bridge.
Yeah, look, this movie is pure pleasure, and I'm blown away by it. I loved it.
Okay, I didn't dislike the movie while I watched it.
Okay.
And I don't feel particularly strongly about not liking it.
Okay.
But I didn't particularly care for this movie.
This is a strong ground you're staking out for a podcast.
I mean, like, what I'm saying is, like, you're not going to see me protesting outside the ArcLight because of this, and I'm not, like, trying to sap anybody's good time. But I didn't really like this movie very much.
Okay.
I feel like it was like a Pixar movie where it basically was like for children, except for the jokes were for the parents who brought them there.
Okay, interesting.
So I kind of just thought it was pretty much nonsense, and a little bit like everybody involved was definitely like, we don't really like Thor, which is like fine.
See, I disagree with that.
But I just think like everything from it was like a lot of it was about sort of being like, do we really want to make like the same old Thor movie? Which I don't think you should. The first two movies were not particularly good.
No.
So even from like the cutting the hair, which I thought was like symbolically like a gesture of kind of like, this is not like the old movies.
Yeah.
We're kind of updating this character.
Shouts to Stan Lee for they finally gave him something to do.
Yeah, right. I thought that it had a kind of, the sense of humor was sort of like everybody in front of and behind the camera kind of thinks this is a joke. And that's fine, but it's still, it is part of a social contract between moviegoer and filmmaker where you're like, like, I'm giving you this money because you believed in what you were making. And I don't know necessarily whether or not the narrative surrounding Taika Waititi's like involvement in the movie, which was sort of like, I don't really know anything about some of the superhero stuff. My job is to create a kind of atmosphere of absurd humor on the set. And it plays very improv. It plays very loose. I feel like a lot of the characters were really a little bit more like, what's the funny thing I can say here rather than anything relating to like my character. Now, that being said, I also don't particularly enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 part, which is basically like people staring at each other and being like, this is what friends and family do.
No,
like there's like a couple of throwaway lines about like, this is what heroes do in Thor Ragnarok. But I don't know, man. And I think also like, I might also, I was talking with Sean Yu about this just before we went on. I think I immediately get a little bit like, if somebody tells me something super funny, I'm just like, okay, like how funny is it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I felt like ultimately, if this movie was just the Running Man on the prison planet, it would have been dope. But they get off Sakaar and there's still like an hour to go, and they have to have like a fight with a wolf. As
Taika said in the interview with Sean, to him this movie is after hours with gods.
That's cool.
You know, I think it's hilarious.
That's a great line, but like it's still another hour.
I think the thing
of like Carl Urban's redemption.
I think the thing where we are not connecting is that the thing that I think Taika does best in all of his work is that he is completely in touch with just like mainlining a deep and true and pure kind of love for the grandiose and the absurd and the genre that exists in a certain type of kid, comic book reading kid, Star Wars action figure playing kid, the type of sensibility that has in many ways taken over our culture, the same sensibility that drives Stranger Things and drives Stranger Things fandom, even when among people who don't even think the show is particularly good. There is something that is very.
I feel like you're foreshadowing.
No, I think people know, but I think he's very much in touch with that. Yeah. But I think what he's able to do is somehow build this castle on top of that sensation and have it be. It is self-aware.
Yeah.
But it is also, I use this word twice, but it is also glorious. You know, there is something about it where, yes, I do want, as much as I like deconstructions of things. You know, I think if we're talking about comic books, I'd probably rather talk about a Grant Morrison comic at this point in my life, you know. But is there still a part of me somewhere underneath all the layers of permafrost and jaded critic, whatever, that wants to see the Hulk punch a giant hellwolf? Yeah, I guess I kind of do.
Sure.
And to see it brought to life in that way, not just the Hulk punch it, but Tessa Thompson dressed as a Valkyrie with a space machine gun shooting it. Yes. Yeah. Give me more of this, and give me genuine affection while we're doing it.
I got a little bit numb to that by the end of the movie. It's just like a long movie to be that stupid.
Well, see, I just didn't think it was stupid. I also thought, I did feel cheated on one score, which is that when we were talking about this off of the trailer, we were like, the rumor is this movie is 85 minutes.
Yeah. Where do we hear that?
I don't know. It's not. It's 2 hours long. You know,
it's like a long 2 as well.
But I didn't think so, because there's something pure here. Like, one of the things that we often have said in talking about these big movies is that one of the key to doing them is you hire Shakespearean actors. Mm-hmm. Because Shakespearean actors, whether it's Lord of the Rings or whether it's a Marvel movie or what have you, Shakespearean actors can sell bullshit by the pound. Mm-hmm. They can make it feel important.
It's the same thing for Thrones. Like, you make Stephen Delane do Stannis' dialogue, it's all of a sudden it's like poetry. Yeah.
But here's something that we as a culture have mostly forgotten, which is when we say Shakespearean trained, it means they are trained to do drama and comedy and to delight equally in both. Mm-hmm. And so going into the movie, I was like, well, how much money did they offer Anthony Hopkins to do this movie again? And then I see him in that first scene.
Shots of like Norway, quote unquote, those are actually just Anthony Hopkins' house.
That's his property.
He's like, I let you shoot here now.
The scene where he is Loki as him.
Well, can I ask you a quick question?
I just wanted to finish the thought. He's having so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to see him have fun, despite, you know, after basically not suffering because he gets paid to do it.
Yeah.
But to be hired for his gravitas for 2 movies and then just gets to be like a funny crank eating grapes in a nightgown. Like,
I have no doubt that everybody involved had a blast. Yeah. It seems like they did. I'm especially a big fan of Anthony Hopkins's Odin is Dead Now outfit, which was just like a linen suit
that he happened to be wearing.
Yeah, in Norway. But when Kate Blanchett's like, well, why did you do this movie? And she's like, I wanted to make something that my kids would be psyched about. Yeah. I think that's cool. I just don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not like a motivating factor for me to go see a movie, is because it's just not in my wheelhouse. And it seemed like nobody really, like, if there's no urgency, and it's not even that particularly connected to the rest of the MCU, which God knows, like, I could do a little bit less with the MCU.
Sure.
But it almost felt like, so could the collective power of the people involved in this movie not have gotten something else made that was like really funny and had nothing to do with a Bifrost Bridge or Asgard or Sharda or whatever, like the demon is?
If not to be the Marvel defender, but like that's one of the beauties of the comic books, is that you can tell different types of stories within the same shared universe in different artistic perspectives. this movie does not need I don't think does not need a straw man or a punching bag to compare it to, but they ran the Justice League trailer in front of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here watching that trailer, and I'm like, this movie is death. It is literally the death of my visual mainframe. It's just like space bugs and Jason Momoa grunting, and it is so abhorrent on so many levels. And then, to me, the worst part of it isn't just the cynicism of it or the desperation of it or whatever. The worst part of it is Affleck being like, that's not how the saying goes. That's not it at all. Because Joss Whedon came in to marvel it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's so cynical and inert, and to me, this movie, it sounded to me like you were describing that kind of thing when you were describing Thor, the sort of jokes, just to have jokes to have on top of jokes with nothing beneath them. To me, this movie was just suffused with life. Like, it was suffused with real passion and real excitement and real fun. Is it, when we talk about Lady Bird in a week, am I going to be doing callbacks to Ragnarok? I promise you not. Like, I can separate those parts of my brain, but this is... It's surprising, and maybe it's because I just saw it, and maybe because it does, maybe because I did, and to some degree do still love comic books.
It's like a fun movie. I definitly get it.
No, but there's
I think
a
lot of it has to do with like the neon explosive color
and
of
the
it.
Mark Mothersbaugh score, which is dope.
Totally.
There is a strain of quote unquote criticism that exists in the 21st century, often online, that I consider to be my own personal giant hell wolf. Yeah. And it's basically when people look at things and their response is, this, what could be bad? It's like people who just tweet like the Lion King cast.
Shoot it into my veins.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, you're not, no. Like we have a semi-responsibility to be thinking sentient people here and like engage with something. And it's just so reductive when they're like, when things get praised just solely for the construction or whatever nostalgic itch it happens to scratch. That said, maybe as I'm talking about it, that's what I'm doing here. Maybe I'm not immune to it.
It's just so cotton candy after a while just makes me sick. You know what I mean? And
for sure.
And it was. I'm not knocking like the witticisms of it or like the general vibe of it. Rachel House is great. Taika's voicing the rock revolutionary gladiator is
really
great.
Funny. Wait, what about? Can we talk about the goddess Tessa Thompson?
I have a few notes I'd like to give. Yeah,
I just want to say this. Here are the people who should be upset about this movie.
Wait, I definitely have a few of these people.
Okay, let's add to this list. Here are the people who should be saltiest. The people behind Westworld.
No, wait. Okay.
Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy should look at this movie and look at Tessa Thompson in this movie and think about what they used her for and what they did to her in season 1 of Westworld, and they should be ashamed.
Okay.
They should look at how they used Anthony Hopkins and look at how he was used in this movie. Because Tessa Thompson is so 100 in this movie. She is so funny. She's got a great accent. Who knew? Didn't need to have an accent, but I guess Valkyries have English accents.
Sure, yeah.
And there are these moments when she's on screen with Hemsworth and Hiddleston and Ruffalo, and she's just owning it. It's delightful.
Yeah. I want to talk to Idris Elba's agent.
Okay.
And talk about like the 9-movie deal you signed in 2009.
I know.
Or whatever it was, when they were like, I'm sure they had a vision for this character, but the fact that my guy needs to get on like, the plane to come shoot like huddling Asgardian refugees into a mountainside and then being like, where to, with contact lenses in.
I know.
It's like, this dude should be James Bond.
I know.
Stop wasting him.
There is some element of this where I think that weirdly the pendulum has shifted from people being like, get me in a Marvel movie, to actually on this one, they probably just sent Taika and he was just like, will you come play in my movie?
Sure.
And people were like, okay.
Yeah. There's a couple of shots of
Carl
him where I'm
Urban,
like, is Idris in the same room as everybody else who's in this scene?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, even Carl Urban, like, it's a bizarre turn for a dude, who's Bones McCoy in the Star Trek movies, but at the same time, he's from New Zealand too, and he's out in the front lines of the press being like, Taika got to make a Taika movie, and I wanted to hang with him.
It's definitely like, I'm happy for everybody involved. I want to talk a little bit about so there's this scene when Kate Blanchett as Hela, she first shows up in Asgard again, and she goes into that room where the Bifrost bridge is, and she kills those other guys around Carl Urban. And it's like...
the guys who were nominally the co-stars of the previous film?
Zachary Levi is one of them?
Yeah.
And like, that was like, he's got a character.
Yeah.
And Kevin Feige was like, it was a noble death for that beloved character. And I was like, what?
Yeah, those guys got sunned.
I was like, I didn't even know he was in this.
For real, like, what's her name? Jamie Alexander is just thanking God for Blind Spot's rigorous filming schedule, so she didn't have to get on the Feige jet to Australia just to be knifed by Kate Blanchett. Yeah, that was just pretty rugged, like, none of this is working, including these quote unquote beloved characters.
Yeah.
They are like the Warriors 3. Like, if you like Thor,
Do they get killed in actual Thor comics?
no, everyone loves them.
Damn.
Let me tell you something else. Asgard doesn't generally get burned to the
I
ground
want
by
to see a
900
list of
foot.
people who were like, when they were in like Iron Man 2 and they were like, I really think when they do Infinity War in 12 years, that's when I come through. And
there's
it's just
space
like,
for me.
hey, Mickey Rourke, so we're going to have to...
No, but what's his name? Frank. The guy who
Frank
does
Grillo.
Crossbow.
Yeah.
Like, he was. When they told him like, oh, you're coming back for in whatever it was, the Ultron one.
Yeah.
He was probably like, bet, like, that's cool. I've heard, like, really got a vision for the Crossbones backstory.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're just going to rob something in the first 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and then that's it for you. It's a wrap. All of what we're saying does speak to the secret sauce for success of these Marvel movies, which is they have found a way to minimize commitment to an extreme degree. Now, this movie filmed in Australia, which is not convenient to many people, but it is to Chris Hemsworth. It is to Kate Blanchett. They have the studios in Atlanta going 24/7, so people can drop in and drop out. And often when we think about people being in this movie, like Jeff Goldblum was hilarious, wonderful, loved it when he's in the movie. How much screen time is it? Like, how much of a commitment was it for
Apparently,
him
he
to be
did like
there?
a 25-minute improvised speech on set.
Great. Give me that.
I also should be careful what I wish for, because I have the feeling like, one of the nice things about this movie is that even though there's a lot of like Hela stuff and there's a lot of Asgard stuff, it is for the most part like they're in mid-flight already. You don't have to do a lot of origin story stuff.
That's very important.
I get the feeling like that is about to change soon, because we'll have all of these new characters being introduced, and then we're going to have to do the heavy lifting of 85 people in two Avengers movies.
Well, they're all people we know.
So I don't think a Marvel movie will feel this light and breezy for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes the most sense, I do think, for their continued success going forward is to allow the standalone movies to be standalone movies.
Sure.
And they had that going for a while. They've gotten away from it a little bit. And then they had that weird, it's not weird. It's a formula that works. But the idea of like, well, we want to reintroduce Spider-Man for the third time in a decade, so we need Tony Stark to fly around a little bit too, just to sort of be the connective tissue.
But you mentioned Spider-Man Homecoming, and I actually think that movie had, like, the humor of that movie was more baked into the story. And baked into like the characters and like the actual.
I love that movie, and I mean no shade at it when I say this is a movie about a thunder god with a giant hammer who runs around on a rainbow bridge. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Like in the comics, there was just an arc where Thor lost his hammer and was riding around on a dimension hopping goat. Like this, there is some fun to be had here in this world should you choose to accept it.
It's wild that this is just what pop culture is now. That's, I guess, what I'm saying.
I would rather it be this that understood
the fun of it.
And those very like Frank Frazetta-esque like tableaus that this movie flashed back to. There was consideration to it.
Sure.
There was some aesthetic sensibility.
I don't want
that
to make
was
it sound like it's
overpowering
Neighbors 2. It was definitely like more wealth. I just thought it was like a little like, do you guys really want to be doing this?
It was funny though.
Okay. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we will be back to talk about the last 3 episodes of Stranger Things. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Hotel Tonight. I want to take a second to tell you about this great app. Hotel Tonight helps you find amazing hotel deals at the last minute. It sounds counterintuitive, but unlike flights, hotel rates usually get cheaper at the last minute. And Hotel Tonight helps hotels sell their unsold rooms, allowing them to pass those deals along to you. These are not last resort places. I've used this app many times over the 2017 calendar year, and I have enjoyed every spot, man. They are actually cool, top-rated hotels that you want to stay in. And with so many awesome partner hotels in a ton of different countries, Hotel Tonight can help you find a great hotel almost anywhere. It's perfect for a spontaneous getaway or finally going on that trip you've been wanting to take for a while. Or if you're the type of person who likes to plan ahead and have things locked down, you can actually book a hotel room in advance with Hotel Tonight, up to 7 days everywhere and up to 100 days in advance in certain major cities. Whether you need a room for tonight, tomorrow, or beyond, you definitely want to download the Hotel Tonight app. Because even though the app's name is Hotel Tonight, you can actually book in advance. All it takes is 10 seconds, just 3 taps and a swipe. So get in on these killer last-minute deals and download the Hotel Tonight app now. Today's episode of The Watch is also brought to you by Upside. If you travel for business, you know it is a game of wins and losses. Having a short wait to get through security, that's a win. Forgetting about the bottle of water in your briefcase so you have to go through security line again, that is a loss. Buying your business trip at Upside.com, well, that's not just a win, it's a triple win. Number one is Upside has great prices for flights, hotels, and rental cars. Win number two is that Upside will reward you with a gift card to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business trip. And win number three is the amazing 6-star treatment you'll get from Upside's customer service specialist, who they call navigators. One recent Upside customer had a flight canceled, and while he was rebooking his flight, a navigator contacted the hotel and had them change his check-in day without charging any fees. That's pretty nice, right? And that's just one example of how Upside navigators go above and beyond for business travelers. Imagine what they can do for you. Upside navigators are instantly accessible 24/7 by voice chat, email, or message on the Upside app, and they reach out to you with useful info to help you avoid a problem before it happens. And I'm going to start your Upside 6-star treatment right now. Go to Upside.com and use our code WATCH, and you will get a minimum $100 gift card to Amazon.com. What a website. That's code WATCH for a minimum $100 gift card to Amazon.com when you buy your next business trip at Upside.com. Upside.com, you deserve a better business trip. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details. We're back. Let's talk a little bit about these last few episodes of Stranger Things, episodes 7, 8, and 9, Andy. And I'm continue to be fascinated by the conversation around Stranger Things precisely because the first season was such like a great slow burn word of mouth phenomenon that was like they're there, but very few people watched it all at once. The first day it came out, really first weekend it came out. Added
to the charm of the experience because it was so unlike a lot of the way Netflix shows operate.
And we were in a meeting earlier today with none other than Bill Simmons, host of The Rewatchables. This is his most notable achievement. And he was talking about how he thought like Netflix kind of screwed this up because what they should have done is release 3 at a time, like Handmaid's Tale, like a couple at a time, and that there would have been a lot more conversation around the episodes if that had happened. I take his point.
Yeah.
But I think that if that had been the case, the reaction to 7, the 7th episode called The Sister, right?
Lost Sister,
would have been that much more passionately against it.
Sure.
I think the fact that it is hidden among the season and you can kind of take it or leave it, and then as soon as it's over, you can get back to Hawkins. If that had been a standalone episode that people were like, it's Stranger Things is on Thursday.
Yeah.
People would have been pissed.
People should be pissed now. People should be in the streets over this episode, man. Like, not really, but
no.
I will say this: it is hard to remember a more. It's hard to remember a worse standalone episode of an otherwise decent show.
Yeah,
and I don't mean decent to be insulting. I mean that Stranger Things, regardless of how you feel about it, generally maintains a certain level of quality. This episode is a disaster from start to finish, I think from maybe not conception, but certainly execution. And it lies there like a certain something in a swimming pool in Caddyshack in the middle of this season to a degree that is really surprising. Now, to your point, despite how negative I am about that episode, and as people know by now, the season as a whole, there was something about it that I almost appreciated because it's a little bit like...
shoot your shot, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit like, oh, someone's alive in there. You know, and I don't like what they're showing me, but okay. You know, they were maybe feeling themselves or they were feeling, that this was what they needed to tell. And this is also evidence of all at once, the strengths and limitations of Netflix, because only Netflix, I think, would have given the Duffer Brothers the room to run that they did in the first season. And probably only Netflix would have been like, and what's your overview for 207? Oh, really? Oh, you want to make the most...
You want to remake The Legend of Billie Jean in Chicago.
You want to make people go back to the Quincy punk episode and be like, well, that was a more understanding representation of a subculture in the 70s and 80s than this was. Sure, go for it, A
couple interesting things have come out about this episode. There's been a press push by the Duffers, but it's actually like one interview that has been aggregated 1 million times because of how divisive 7 is. But they were just basically like, we wanted to challenge ourselves. There was that, But we've mentioned a couple of times the slight strain you can kind of feel on the writing process in this season of them kind of speeding up to slow down in places. And the fact that this isn't Chekhov's sister, that Callie doesn't come back in the last 2 episodes is definitely like a sign that this was, we tried it out. We didn't quite think it worked. We're not going to bring her back in this season. Now, obviously, this is about bigger world building. The future of this show is probably outside of Hawkins for as much as Hawkins is this show.
Right.
I think that they're going to have to start thinking about the ramifications of like, if there is a secret program with at least 11 kids, where are the other 10? Right. And we found one of them. But I thought that the way they talked about this episode, the idea of it being almost like a weird backdoor pilot of something else from the Stranger Things universe, and also that this needed to happen for Eleven's storyline to have her come back, and all that stuff about it was very telling about the environment that this season must have been created in.
Okay, yeah.
So while I didn't enjoy it per se, I think I am one of those people who watched it in the flow of the last few episodes of the season. I think I watched this season in two chunks. And so it kind of is like a bad episode of 24 where you're like, oh my God, this was like a really long episode with the daughter. And then there's some Jack stuff. I was like, I see what's going on here and I see what they were trying to do. And I don't even know what about it is that bad other than everything. You know what I mean? It's not like any one of the performances is bad.
No, it's just so it's bizarrely tone deaf and so adjacent to anything of interest to most people. You know, there are a lot of examples in beloved shows where, and this actually ties into something I said last week too about the need creators have to show their work. And even a little bit to our conversation about Thor and how all the heavy lifting was done by the first 2 movies, even if no one liked them, so that Taika Waititi could come in and just ignore all that and just build a story. This feeling that we have to put this character through this gauntlet in order for her to become the character we need her to be later in the plot. So you're going to take this medicine and we're going to go on this journey with her, even though nobody wants this, you know? And I do think that there ought to be someone in the room of the creative process being like, if nobody wants it, then nobody wants it. Even if you don't want it, you know, then you don't need to be doing it.
Yeah, like what is the end point you're trying to get to? Is it to get 11 a makeover and show her that she can lift a truck?
That she's the Incredible Hulk. That anger fuels her, basically. The idea of creators challenging themselves is worthwhile. And even on shows that are among the greatest of all time, there are plenty of examples of people stepping outside of their comfort zone to the show's detriment. Anytime on The Sopranos, for example, that we would go home with Dr. Melfi, and then she and her colleagues would be sitting around a dinner table talking about NPR in like the most weird abject performance of suburban upper middle class liberal whatever that was, you know, intentionally placed against Tony's world. But it felt so totally out of place and out of whack. So there's plenty of examples of that. But to me, it's just further proof that this season, now that I've seen the whole thing, just needed a radical rethink from the ground up. Wait, what story are you guys telling? Wait, what is really working? What do you want to do here? Because all of the things that worked, you could talk about how sequels just basically tell the same story again, but louder. I wish in this case. Because if you really, like, having watched all of it, drill down and think about where everyone was at any point and what the threat was this year, none of it really makes any sense or adds to any. There was no. Well,
they couldn't commit to the bit because the threat was Will. Like the threat was always going to, the threat was Will. It was right there. They tease it. The Spy is probably the best episode of the season. The idea that like Will could be possessed by this darkness and
might have to be sacrificed to defeat it.
I'm somebody who's just like so in the bag for the charm of these kids and for the comfort food feeling of this world that like all the upside down stuff, all the Hawkins National like laboratory stuff, just any of it, it just really doesn't matter to me. I think I am reacting to this the way you reacted to Thor, which is like, you're like, it's a friggin' Pegasus jumping over a rainbow bridge. I'm like, man, it's the 80s and the police are playing. Like, I'm just kind of fine with that.
Except this season felt so claustrophobic by pulling the characters apart.
Yes.
The town of Hawkins was not a character in this season.
And I do think I think that they basically got to the ledge and they were like, no, but once, without knowing anything about the process of the how they made this show, wrote this show, the stuff about Will and the fact that they have talked about like Will was supposed to maybe kill someone this season.
Yeah.
is like, that's the darkness. That's the Empire Strikes Back Temple of Doom thing that you guys wanted. And that was the thing that you were going to confront viewers on. But they obviously just felt like you can't bring Will back from that. And if that's the case, then you basically run out of room. And you have to then just like backpedal, and you can get Will turns good again by just using a lot of heat lamps.
Yeah, they just sweated him out, and then he got to dance with the girl we've never seen before in the end. Look, they punted. I think you're exactly right. And it gives me a lot of concern about the success of the show going forward, because what is the threat? What is the enemy? Now, you can tell me the threat is a giant 8-legged, nightmare monster from another dimension that wants to come to our dimension because that's what evil creatures do.
Right.
But I don't care about that, really. What we care about, is when there is a villain, there's a face, there's a desire. There's nothing here except just evil heebie-jeebies coming out of the walls and out of the ground right now, unless Will becomes the face of it.
Right.
And so by stripping that away, I don't know what we're up against anymore, because we've also neutralized the bad men doing the bad things. I mean, I guess Modine's just waiting on that third season check, because he's still floating around, and that's obviously still out there. But we talked about last week, the problem with the spy episode was that they're all red shirts that get killed. Now, shouts to Sean Astin, who literally was the McBain's partner of the season. but because my faith in the Duffers was so shaken leading up to that episode, to that moment when he goes, I was like, they're not even going to be able to do this, because they've fallen in love with him too.
Sure, right.
And that was a bummer to me. There are flickers of life. There's flickers in this season that remind me of what was so compelling and enjoyable about the first season. Sometimes they feel like they almost happened by accident, like Billy flirting with a certain actress whom you and I adore, a certain actress whom you and I think has been woefully underserved this season.
Are you talking about Buono, though?
I'm always talking about Buono, though. I got that Buono follow, though.
What about Buono? Can she take a bath without being interrupted?
Look, she looked lovely in her silk robe. I know we all want Caligon to take her away. She wants Caligon and her agents to take her away.
Thank you to everybody who tweeted me like literally 9 hours into Stranger Things being available, being like, what about Buono, though? Like, I thought she was going to die.
But in that scene, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. Here's this character, Billy, who makes no sense, serves no purpose. And in many ways, that scene with his dad where they're humanizing him
I
or
like
whatever.
to think that in the same way that Lindelof is like, I made the beginning of Leftover Season 2 for Andy, that they made that scene in Stranger Things for me.
That's a beautiful, beautiful thought. I appreciate that. But it's just, to me, it's just a sign of like, and then we can, I think we should change the conversation to like what can be done going forward and what the show might turn into. But there are just these little, the show was frustrating to me because of not just the goodwill, but because of the good decision making in one season. And people don't become worse storytellers or worse filmmakers. I really do think, and we have no information to back this up other than the show, that the time constraints, the pressure seem to be, in this case, maybe impossible, maybe enormous. It would be a good sign if Stranger Things 3 is announced as 2019.
Well, yeah, but then you're going to get a bunch of kids with bad mustaches.
But already, I don't know if like Finn Wolfhard had a lot of like commitments to it, but Mike wasn't on the show this year.
Well, this is the thing. We've talked about this before. And if it sounds like we're like, I think we both want a lot from the show. I get more from it than Andy does, obviously. It is a fascinating thing where it is sitting right in the center between this art and commerce debate that we're always having, not especially in the way that we are processing television now by its delivery system. Okay. And this idea of, do you go deeper or do you go wider? Obviously, this show is it is a huge, huge hit. It might be the biggest hit in the history of Netflix. It's not.
It's not.
Okay.
It does very well, but from everything I've gathered, there are other shows that do a lot better.
Okay. That being said, it is a pop cultural phenomenon.
It does. It's in the shows that I've heard that do better don't get the same kind of breathless coverage in the media. That's one of them.
I'm pretty breathless for that show. It sits right at this nexus between like art and commerce in terms of like, they've got to get as many seasons out of these kids while they're still cute. You can't just like let it go for 3 years and bring it back and do the late high school years. And that's gonna put a lot of pressure on them.
That's a good point.
So they're introducing people like Max, and they're introducing Billy, and they're introducing Callie, and it's like, well, why aren't you just spending more time with Mike, who was probably the most interesting character of the year because he turned it into a kind of an asshole, And like this whole experience. What if this whole experience did the unthinkable, which is make one of these kids not cute?
Yeah, and also like the Mike and Eleven thing really has emotional weight.
Absolutely,
and it was buried. this season.
She is the ultimate girlfriend at camp. Like, it's great to watch. Like, that's an incredibly interesting relationship.
And there was no time or room for them to even have more than a tacit conversation. As soon as they see each other again, the Duffers pull Mike into a room with Hopper and then have this over-the-top, like, you all right, I learned it by watching you, emotional breakdown where he hugs him until he's hitting him till he's hugging him. That didn't feel right. That just felt like something that was created in the room and then didn't play. Just certain other choices, like the character of Max, that actress was good. I liked the dynamic of adding her to the group. But we got nothing about her other than she is literally the dream girl of boys like that, who skateboards and plays video games and has cute nicknames for them but makes out with them anyway. Her brother got an emotional backstory in that scene with the abusive father. Max doesn't get any backstory. Yeah. She's just like, oh, word, you have demons in this town? Let's go.
I like Dig Dug. Let's fight.
Let's roll.
Let's play Dr. Quinn television doctor.
Nope. Love it, but nope.
What do we do to fix this show for you? Okay. So do you invest more in fewer characters?
I think you need to
Do you leave Hawkins?
I mean this seriously. I think they need to take a beat. Now, obviously, I think you make a really strong point. For any number of reasons, they are not going to have a long break between seasons. And in fact, all this advice is probably moot because whether it's been officially renewed or not, that room has probably been going for quite some time.
I mean, they're doing 4 seasons. That's the line.
That's the word?
Yeah.
But I do think they need to do the kind of conversation that can be very, very hard to have for a show, particularly a successful show, particularly a show caught in the very breathless cycle of production in the 21st century, which is, let's really take a moment. Let's leave our writer's room. Let's go on a retreat. Well, I don't know. Let's go to Chipotle. Let's take a break. I don't know. Do people like Taco Bowl? I don't know. I'm trying to put myself into the head of a Duffer brother, and I'm not sure which one. And ask, what is the show about? Really?
Okay, so
shows don't do this enough.
What is the best version of the show about to you?
What I'm afraid of, the best version of the show to me is growing up in an innocent time and learning the world is not innocent, and there's danger in the world. And finding something, finding a way towards good, finding a way towards community within that.
Right.
What worries me is, and this is often the case, that when things get noisier and more things get added onto it, that what the show is about to the people making it is the upside down, is scary things that go bump in the night or slither or whatever.
So for me, the show is about Steve reclaiming his rightful place as king of the town. Steve
didn't even get a coda. All these other characters get these sweet moments at the dance. Where's Steve at? He's healing from his broken face. Unreal.
Is Billy catching a charge for that?
The unfairness of Steve's life. I agree. Steve.
Okay, Krzysztof Kieslowski. The unfairness of Steve's life.
That's the best version of season 3 of Stranger Things.
The Decalogue of Steve.
No, it's like Copland.
Yeah.
But it's fat old Steve moving slowly through the town that he used to run.
You blew it.
That's what I'm saying. That would be the best version of it.
You were the king of the town and you blew it. You had the nice hair.
These are the matchups. These are the mashups you can only get if you listen to this podcast. But I mean it. I really mean this genuinely, because having made it through the second season, the parts that I thought were most compelling in the first season, everything about the experiments and 11 and the room, the flashbacks and Modine, and this idea of there's a scary evil out there and you don't know what it is. Can we go back to some of that? Because honestly, if you look at the second season and you just break it down into its pieces, no one was ever challenged. That nothing was ever difficult. Now, Bob might argue the alternative to that.
Yes.
But
they talk about having a coda.
But
they were like, did you know Bob's dead?
Did you know that hell beasts are currently gnawing on Bob? Like a fucking corn on the cob? Every plan they had worked. They rescued Hopper just in time. They set the thing on fire when they needed to. They literally cranked the thermostat up on the well, they didn't have Nest then, but they just turned up the heat lamps and the demon was gone. They took an elevator to hell, and 11 had a flashback and sealed a hellmouth.
I thought that was pretty dope.
I mean, it looked cool, but what? Why is everything easy? Why can she do this? Do you know what I mean? It just, at that point, I didn't even know what I was looking at because I didn't know why. So to me, and I'm curious, I know people don't like hearing me criticize it, so I will stop now. But I do wonder if now that more people have caught up, or if they hadn't already binged it.
There are times when you and I have disagreed on a show, and I think that you're being unfair. I do not think you're being unfair to the show.
And I do think that generally people probably, the majority of the opinion is somewhere in between us, where I think that people would admit that they love this and they want this to be better, and that they were disappointed in the season.
Also, recency bias is just like every breath you take at a school dance is like going to just get a lot of points with me. I just really,
me too.
You know what I mean? Like I can't help who I am.
It's beautiful.
At the end of the day,
I enjoyed the last scene.
Yeah.
I enjoyed a show, and one of the reasons why I like I like and root for the Duffer Brothers is because they are, in the same way I was talking about Taika Waititi being in touch with that sort of youthful, innocent fandom. The Duffer Brothers get an unvarnished sweetness of nostalgia and of being a teenager, and so the kindness that Nancy shows to Dustin resonates.
yeah.
Of when Mike sees 11 come in, it's like, okay, these are real. That's that uncut
This
raw.
is exactly what you were saying. Which is
with.
like, why do they divide and conquer these kids? Like, put them all in a gym together, play the police, like let them have fun in a room together. And who knows what the reasons were, like what Millie Bobby Brown's Godzilla shooting schedule meant she could or couldn't be.
Is that what she's doing?
Yeah,
She is, by the way.
she's great.
She's a really good
She's
actor.
great. All right, we should wrap it up.
So-
I want to talk a little bit about the shows that we're going to be moving on to now that we've got Stranger Things out of the way.
And by the way, people have asked us this, like, what had the belt? And by the way, I appreciate your commitment to our completely arbitrary bit that we do and we don't do enough of. The reason we didn't talk about it, I think, or at least I didn't, is because clearly Stranger Things has the belt in the cultural sense. I was just I was sort of grudgingly holding it back.
I think you can make an
because-
argument like you can make if that's the case, then I think that the idea of the belt is really like a 50-50, like our critical acclaim versus like what people are talking about.
Right.
Because if it was just the latter, then I guess the Good Doctor would have the belt. And if it was the former, then
The Deuce.
Yeah, the Deuce would have the belt. But, I think Mindhunter kind of splits the difference. But one of the problems with like Netflix is that I don't know when people are watching these things, and I don't know. You can just tell these shows just don't get written about and talked about in the same way as like an HBO show. And it's precisely because nobody is ever on the same thing. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a bar or a dinner or something over the last month where it's like, start talking about Mindhunter and stop because somebody's like, oh, I've only seen 3, and maybe they'll finish it, maybe they won't. But that's not the same thing as, obviously Thrones has a lot of other things going for it besides that, but it's not the same thing as Big Little Lies, where it was like, oh, did you see the last episode? Oh my God, I have to talk to you about it.
It's an interesting conversation within the industry too, because I have to think that creators who have spent, we talked to Jonathan Groff, they spent 10 months shooting Mindhunter, that on some level, they're a little frustrated or bummed that the conversation can't continue, or whether it's purely for ego validation purposes, or it's just to feel that you're part of something.
The question is whether anybody outside of people like you and me care about this.
But I'm saying I do think that I'm curious, not for fans, because it doesn't matter, you get the content. But I'm saying creatively, if anyone will begin to steer their business, they're not going to steer their business elsewhere. Here's what I was going to say. Everybody wants to sell their show to Netflix because Netflix says, here's the money, go make your show. We will make it. We don't pilot stuff.
There's no notes.
Apparently not, because we all saw episode 7 of Stranger Things season 2. Go make it. That's all you want. And then at the end of it, I wonder if there's a little bit of a bittersweet feeling because you aren't getting that hit. You're sort of missing. You think, oh, here's your golden ticket to the whatever age we're in of television. We get to be part of it the same way the great shows of the last decade got to be part of it. But then it's kind of not the same thing.
Yeah.
You are just, Jonathan Groff and Holt McElhaney are going to go back to Pittsburgh for 10 more months and make another season of Mindhunter. Then they might make another one after that. And they're doing incredible work. And I hope everyone watches it. But it's on some level, I wonder if it bugs people the way it does seem to bug me clearly, that all that work, they are shoveling more content.
It just seems like it's a shame if there's so much talent in television right now to not have it properly appreciated.
And it's all good, but and they're doing all that work for Netflix's share price.
Sure. Okay.
Which is, I'm sure it's doing great, by the
way. Coming up, we're going to be talking about a couple of shows in the coming weeks. So we just wanted to lay out the menu here. At various points over the coming weeks, we'll be talking about Smilf, which is a Showtime show.
Not just talking about it. On Thursday's show, I believe, barring insult or injury, we will have the creator, star, writer, sometimes director, Frankie Shaw.
Fantastic.
I'm really impressed by Smilf. You can watch the pilot. I think it's on YouTube, too. It is a show that the log line, like Single Mom in Southie, you think could be done in a variety of horrible ways, and it's done with real personality, real specificity. It's really good. Okay, so we're also going to be talking about Godless, which is a show from Scott Frank and Steven Soderbergh on Netflix. It is a Western about a town of women in the 19th century fighting off outlaws. What's the last time Scott Frank and Steven Soderbergh collaborated? What was the name of that? Was that Out of Sight? Yeah, that was Out of Sight. Scott Frank also made an amazing movie called The Lookout that if you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, you should definitely
definitely see that. We hope to talk to him on the pod. We're going to do a Mr. Robot check-in. Marvelous.
Yeah, guys, watch Mr. Robot this week.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel comes back on Amazon soon.
Yeah.
And we're also going to talk about Girlfriend Experience and hopefully have Amy Simons on the show.
Yeah, because you were way out ahead of me on Girlfriend Experience, and
remarkable show.
And our friend Sam Esmail was talking it up, and I didn't catch up to it, and then I did finally watch it.
Yeah.
It's really, really a fascinating and well done show.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, the second season is even more interesting because it went from being it was sort of a half-hour drama, which I'm all in on, but it was a one and done season following one character. And this season, because it's a show made by two distinct filmmakers, Lodge Kerrigan and Amy Simons, they apparently made two distinct shows. Yep. Which is
with two different stars.
Two different stars. And I'm excited anytime someone messes with the format and tries to give us something a little bit different or changes pace with what we're expecting, because there's so much is the same. And these are really interesting filmmakers who, they're not on Netflix or on Stars, but appear to have been given carte blanche. So
yeah.
It's
so
cool.
We're really excited about a bunch of the shows coming up. We'll obviously have Megan Abbott back on to talk about Queenpin, which is the next.
Who's reading Queenpin out there?
And when Megan comes back on, we'll probably hit the end of Mindhunter, because she was tweeting today about what a big fan she was of the show, especially the end. So we'll get back to Mindhunter eventually.
Look at us watching TV, talking about it. It's
we'll
like
also
2013 in here.
We'll have some other surprises next week. Yeah, man. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Great to see all my Bransky friends out
there. Go see Lady Bird. Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Hotel Tonight. Things change, the weather changes, your mood definitely changes. So why lock yourself into plans that might change? With Hotel Tonight, you don't have to, because you'll get incredible deals on awesome hotels, even at the last minute. Booking on Hotel Tonight gives you the freedom and flexibility to play things by ear, while knowing that you'll score a great price and a great place to stay. Or, if you're the type who likes to plan ahead and get things locked down, you can actually book a room in advance with Hotel Tonight. Up to 7 days in advance everywhere, up to 100 days in certain major cities. Whether you need a room for tonight, tomorrow, or beyond, you definitely want to download the Hotel Tonight app. So download that app, Hotel Tonight, to find some seriously amazing deals now. Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Mack Weldon. With a smart design, premium fabrics, and a simple shopping experience, Mack Weldon underwear is definitely better than whatever you are currently wearing. In addition to looking and feeling great, all Mack Weldon products are crafted with natural fibers that have built-in performance capabilities so that they work hard too. They even have a line of silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, which means they eliminate odor, all of that, and they are shipped right to your door. If you don't like your first pair, you can keep it and they will still refund you. No questions asked. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your purchase using promo code WATCH.